right, 5th grade, we are back to work on our awesome winter landscape. Now, we already have our background with our sun that we made by dipping cardboard into our yellow paint to do printmaking, and then we made our sun circle with chalk. Now we're going to get a white piece of paper to make layers for the ground. Now, we're going to have at least a foreground and a middle ground. So the foreground is what's closest to you. The middle ground is what's behind that. And then the background is what's the very back. But you could do 3 layers if you want. So the first option is to take scissors and cut across your paper to make hills and valleys. So I'll show you that way first. So you're going to decide how tall you want it to be. I'm going to start with my middle ground. So I'm going to make it taller first, and then I'll make some shorter ones. So maybe I'll start like right here, and then I'll turn my paper, and I will go ahead and cut. I can go down and go up, down. You can make it more straight if you want to. It's up to you. It's your landscape. Now that is the first layer. And if I were to glue it down, it would look like this. So it's going to cover up a little bit of your sun, and that's okay because we have a sunrise or sunset. But let's go ahead and do that again. So I could use that, or I could cut a new pattern, or if you want to try something different, instead of cutting, you could tear instead. So to tear, you're going to hold down on one side and hold down still with one hand, and then the other hand is going to pull. And you might kind of direct it a little bit, but when you tear, it's going to do what it's going to do. All right, now that looks pretty good. So now I have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. If you want to be kind of crazy and do another layer, you know what? You totally could. But I'm going to leave it there with just 2 layers. Now, before we glue this down, we're going to make our layers more visible, but we're also going to make our layers look more realistic, like there are shadows on them. And we're going to leave this white because it's a winter landscape and this is snow. But if you ever look outside when it snows, you'll see that sometimes your snow has a blue shadow on it. So at the art store, I have these blue chalks that you can use. Just take a piece of chalk. This, my friends, if you see this where it's like a hexagon and it's got Crayola on the side, this is actually a colored pencil. You don't want that. That's not really going to work. And then sometimes you might find one that feels oily. And if it feels oily, it's an oil pastel. But we're going to start with one at a time with a piece of chalk. And we're going to rub a little bit of this chalk around the top edge. And just like you guys used chalk last time, you know that once you rub a little bit on, you can use your finger or a paper towel or tissue to rub it and blend it. Now I'm going to blend it, make it more interesting. So this is the darker blue chalk. And I'm doing this on a messy mat because it's going to get all over the table if I don't use a messy mat. So this is like the shadow at the edge of my snow. Now I'll put this one aside and I'll do this one. And I'll do this one with a lighter blue so you can see the difference. So just kind of use the side and rub it on. Rub, rub, rub. You don't have to use too much because then you're going to use your finger. And I'm going to use my other finger because this one's dirty. And I'm going to rub that. Blend it, blend it, blend it. And you can blend right off of the paper onto the messy mat. Okay, now I'm done. So I can rub my fingers off with a paper towel, a tissue, or a messy mat even. I'm going to put my chalk away and I'm going to get my background back out. Now I'm ready to glue these down. So I'm going to start with my bigger one first. I'm going to line it up. Awesome, that's where it goes. So I'm going to take out my glue stick. And we always glue the smaller things. We're not going to just randomly glue like this. We're going to flip it over, go around the edges. And I got a little bit on my sun, but it'll dry clear. Maybe a little bit in the middle. Then I'm going to flip it over, measure it out. There we go. I don't want to smooth too much and mess up my chalk, so I'm going to flip it over, give it a massage, double check my names on the back. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. I'm going to flip it over, go around the edge, maybe a tiny bit in the middle, flip it back over, line it up. And now I have my beautiful hills and valleys of my landscape. All right, when you get done with this, you can ask me to cut off some of the bottom if it's kind of hanging off the bottom if you need to, just let me know. And then you're ready to get out some paint. So put away all of your other supplies. And then at your table, you should share one of our paint containers. Now, our paint containers have lots of colors in them, but we only need some colors for trees today. So the first color we're going to use for trees today is brown. So I have a small paintbrush, not a giant one. And I'm going to get some brown. And if I don't like the brown I have, I can use my messy mat to mix my own brown color. There we go. To make it lighter or darker, whatever I want to do. All right. Once I have my brown color, I'm going to go ahead and decide where I want some trees to go. So the trees at the front of my paper at the bottom are going to be bigger because that is how perspective works. So I'm going to make these bigger. So I'll make them maybe taller. The ones at the very bottom are going to be really big. But the most of our tree is going to be pines, which are green. So we're just going to do little tree trunks at the front. Big one here. And you want to give it some variety. So you don't want to make them all in a straight line. You want to kind of shake it up a little bit. All right, those are my tree trunks for the front. Now I am either going to get a smaller paintbrush like this, or I'm going to just make sure I'm using the tip of my paintbrush to make thin lines. So if that's hard for you, you're going to want to get a smaller paintbrush. And I'm going to make some smaller trees that are farther away in the distance. That's called perspective. So the ones that are farther away are bigger. I said it backwards. The ones that are closer are bigger, and the ones that are farther away are smaller. So if I have any back here, they're going to be teeny tiny. So you can make a lot or just a couple, but you want to make sure you're using the space on your paper in an interesting way. So you're adding variety. All right, so that is my plan for my trees. Now I'm going to clean off my paintbrush with some water, or if I want a smaller brush, I'm actually going to use a smaller brush. I'm just going to put this in the hot tub and get a smaller brush. Then I'm going to use my smaller brush to start making the green for my trees. Now, listen, we don't want to make all of our trees just this boring green color. We could start by making one that's boring green color. So we're going to start by making a V shape at the top of where the tree is going to be. And then we're going to make strokes that come down. But the key is you're making the paint strokes in the direction that the pine needles would go in. So the pine needles are going to go down. So you're going to paint down. You're not going to paint back and forth sideways because that's not going to look very realistic. You're going to paint down. And you're going to cover most of that tree trunk that you drew because these are evergreen trees and they are mostly pines. You don't even really see much of the trunk. Sometimes you don't see any of it. So that's my first one with my boring green that was already here. Maybe I can make a tiny one back here. So make a little V shape and then little paint strokes that come down. There's one in the distance. Now let's make a different green. So I'm going to take some of my green I was using and I'm going to rub it all off onto the messy mat so that I'm going to grab some yellow to make it a yellowish green instead to make it a little different. Now, if I do a good job rubbing off all the paint off of my brush, I don't really need to get paint or get water to clean my brush out because I'm not really going to contaminate it. See, this time I did not do a very good job. I got a little bit of green in there. So I'm just going to make sure I scoop that out and clean it out later. So now I have a lighter green with the yellow. I can make it even lighter by adding a little bit of the white. There you go. So I made my own green. So now let's use this green over here. So make a V shape and then paint down. I'm saying a V shape, but it's really like an upside down V shape. Okay, maybe I use that same one back here, mix it up a little bit, upside down V shape, paint down. Okay, maybe I'll do a little bit of this green and mix it in, make it a little bit different. Or maybe I'll put a little bit blue in it this time. Ooh. Okay, so now I have this green that I made. I'm gonna use that right here. V shape, paint down. Remember, your paintbrush is a ballerina. It's dancing on its tippy toes. It's not scooting around on its butt because nobody wants to go to the booty scooting ballet. So take your time and you're dancing. So if you look at my hand, I'm kind of flicking gently as I paint. So I'll do a little one here. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process until I do all of my trees. Remember, take your time so you're not mixing all the colors together in your paint palette. You can make your own greens on your messy mat, but you're not going to waste the paint. Of course, you would not do that, of course. All right, guys, I will go ahead and meet you at the end. Alright, boys and girls, I am back. I'm finished. You can see all of the different greens I created on my messy mat over here. I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see the other side. I have a ton of trees, and I'm going to let this dry on the drying rack, put my paintbrushes in the paintbrush hot tub, and then next time we come in, we will paint some snow and some other little details. But that's all we're going to do for today. I can't wait to see what you guys create, and have fun.